Welcome to the Art of Ashan podcast. Greetings, brother. How's everything?
Good, man. Going great.
Fabulous. It's the end of the semester, so it's been a long ride, but we're finally at the end game. So a lot of students are preparing for graduation, but it's been a lot of things going on, and that I'm seeing, and I'm sure you can attest to this. But in my conversations with our brothers and our sisters here on campus, man, these students are going through a lot. In a positive way and also a negative way. But when I look at it from a lens of how we grew up, I'm starting to see that the high levels of anxiety, the mental stress, and a lot of just everything in their mental it's just on a totally different wavelength than what I'm used to. So in my dealings and in my conversations, I find it sometimes a little difficult to connect with them, because what I'm starting to realize is that their life, in a lot of cases, is primarily online. So their interactions are all digital. So a lot of what they feel, a lot of what they think, a lot of the things that they absorb is what they're taking in from what we call social media. How are things like, how do you view that over there on the West Coast in California? You think, is it the same things going on? Is this a universal issue that we're going to have to deal with in the future, or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's affecting the whole world, and primarily, California, LA, Hollywood is a source bed for all of that entertainment or the media world. So even as we do projects in the VR space and in the MR space and changing these different realities, it's shifting these younger people's ability to know what's real and what's not real and how to respond. So there's like this splitting of emotional consciousness. As you were saying earlier, this whole revolutionary time frame that we're in, if you trace it back, and once again, so you can see the patterns, you have agriculture. That's what we knew, that's who we are, that's our ancestral foundation. Even if you start in America's 250 years old, which is not a long time within the context of overall time. So let's just use American history. American history, you had slavery. There was a rebuilding that happened, or as they call it, reconstruction after slavery. And then they began to take the principles of agriculture and they alchemized it into industrialism. So the same principles that was used there was being moved into the Industrial Revolution, as they call it, right? And then now we're seeing from the Industrial Revolution, we're in the transition of another revolution that they call the Tech Revolution. This current, what do they call millennials?
There's
so many different terms.
Zennials, there's so many different terms, yeah.
So all these terms and classifications that are defining people who buy into the ways of the system, it becomes very difficult. That's why the scripture said in the last days there's going to be a separation between families, fathers from daughters. Why? Because of the very thing you talked about. You're not on social media all the time. It's not a part of something that's in your consciousness. But for them as young people, that's all they know. So if you don't communicate in ways that are comparable, and you talk on like, no, just come to me, just talk to me directly. Come, let's hang out. Let's do it. Especially in these teenage years, they don't necessarily want to do that. So there's a gap that begins to form. And especially as fathers, as you'll see, and I'm learning, that it becomes a challenge within just a few years now. I mean, there's generational gaps between 25-year-olds and 18-year-olds. Like the gaps keep becoming greater and greater, and it's the whole separation. Usually you would have like 10 or 15 years of a group of society that kind of see things the same way. Now they've been able through technology to break it down to where you and your people are here, and then they using it, for instance, a different word. We be like, yo, that's dope. Or some people say that's lit. And then there's people say that no cap. I'm like, what? After no cap, that's when I gave up on most of the slang. Because a lot of it now is just in its own world, and I'm not a part of that world, so it becomes a challenge.
Tie shit.
What's that? That's what,
there's so many. There's so many things.
That's what they say right now. That's the new thing. Tie shit. So what do they say? They're saying both words, but they're just cutting off the ends.
Right. It's unbelievable. Like, I mean, the slang is just, oh my God.
At least you're living with the students on a day-to-day basis, which is really great because you can know the language that they're speaking. and then it can help bridge the gap, because we used to do stuff like that. Yeah, you got the joint or whatever, and we still say that to this day because it's your own kind of culture. They have their own thing, so we can find those gaps and bridge it. It just takes time too. You know, you have to actually invest and be there with them, and parents can't do that most of the time because they're either working, traveling, So all these different distractions.
Life is so demanding. But even today there's an article, because I read this morning, right here on Yahoo. It says, Huffington Post, the title of the article says, "Are you raising a member of the anxious generation?" Here they call it the anxious generation. Someone wrote a book on it and says, here's how to protect your kids' happiness. And the first thing they said, limit screen time, especially social media, and maximize interactions in real life.
You need to send that to me when you get a chance, so I can send it to some in my personal space.
Yeah. So that was the first thing. Minimizing, as we just said, minimizing social media and getting them really engaged in building their interpersonal skills. The second point they say here is show kids they matter because of who they are, not what they achieve.
Yeah.
So showing kids they matter because of who they are. So just getting to know them on a personal level, not because, but once again, when you go to social media, it's all about likes. It's all about trying to get people to follow, to do all these things. So now they're used to that type of response where, okay, if I do something, if I go viral, if I do this is the prize I'm going to receive. Or if I get straight A's, I'm going to get that recognition. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get that. As opposed to everyday life, praise them for nothing, just because of who they are, and really getting to understand. So, and that's something we talk about all the time when we're within the foundation, when we talk about passion, purpose, and gifts. Like, that's one thing that I noticed in our discussions, even with academics, professors, that we really don't dive into. And I get why, but we really need to pay attention to understanding who the individual is. Granted, we're at an institution where there's a give and exchange of learning of ideas, and there are benchmarks that they have to meet certain standards, pass an exam, but there's also this missing link where we're treating students like commodities. They're just shepherding the flock. They're just numbers. We don't really get to know them. So unless they actively engage and pursue you, or you do it the same thing intentionally, it's like you kind of miss the uniqueness of the demographics of who you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And
then what usually happens is, because you don't have the time. See, that's the key, because it takes time to develop relationship. You may say, you're better than what you do, and they're like, oh, okay, thanks. But then they spend 15 hours online.
Social media.
In
one year out the other.
And then after a while, you get calcified. So then, like soil, you get the topsoil is messed up. So any water that comes on, it runs off. It doesn't go into the soil of the heart, into the soil of the ground, like we're seeing. And what we see reflected in nature is a reflection of what's happening internally. Because whatever's on the outside is a reflection, or the residue, or the reaction, or the karma, or whatever term you want to use, of what you practice or are around in an environment. It shapes the physical environment. So until we begin to understand those principles and get back to those ancestral ways, we're never going to get out of this, because
That's true.
It's set that way based on the actions that you're performing that you don't even know you're doing.
So very true. And and that brings us to a point where, even as you said, when we can look at nature, and nature gives us the perfect blueprint or example of how to maneuver through life, even in problem solving. I know when you're dealing with interpersonal relationships, when you're dealing with brothers and sisters, whether it's conflict, whether it is any type of interaction, oftentimes people maneuver or look at life from the outside before they look in, versus starting in and then looking out. So if you want to see if the seed is good or not, you have to look at the root, right? You have to actually look at the intrinsics, the ingredients of what that seed possessed as to why it grew or it didn't grow. It'll be all right there, versus blaming the environment or blaming not enough rain or sun or this or the grain. Was it good seed or not? Because we can tell everything we need to know based on that. So a lot of our problems and the issues that we run into, or even the successes we have, if you start inwardly, you can definitely see the remnants of where it began, how the cause and effect took place to get you to where you're going. So that's one thing I try to tell students all the time is, don't worry about your external. it doesn't matter because I can move you in different environments, but you're still going to be you. So whatever it is inside you, you're just going to take it and maneuver and put it in a different space, and it's going to show up this very exact same way. Versus they hating on me. I said, why is it you the common denominator? Everybody, I just met 100 people and all of them are hating on you about the same thing. What lens are you operating from? Or what is the blind spot that you don't see that you're not self-aware of? So just some things, in life that we can begin to pay attention to, because as we see, being there on the farm, nature is a good example because we are a part of nature. Essentially, from the dust we came, the scripture say, from the dust we shall return.
Right.
Our
and that's what
bodies
I'm learning
decay.
with the soil. Yeah.
Immediately.
And to your point, you talk about the soil or to dust we return. I was in a meeting earlier and we were talking about, because I'm learning about soil management and the importance of a healthy soil, and that it works with all the other elements, but if the soil isn't have the microbes and the bacterias and the fungi and all those different ingredients, which are thousands of them, like when you pick up soil and you put it in your hand, there's more living organisms in your hand than human beings on the earth. All these small things, everyone plays a role and everyone does what they're supposed to do. If you're here on earth, you play a role in the sustainability until your time is off the earth. So like you said, we have to redirect our people's mind back to soil understanding, because what happens is that the fungal, the bacteria, the microbes feed into the plants. Sun comes in with the water, manifestation of different plants and fruits and vegetables and so forth and so on. The animals eat it, you eat it, I eat it. And then after a while, what do? You decompose, you drop back to the soil, and the worms and everything bring you back into the flow of the cycle of life, or the circle of life, as they said in Lion King. So if you skip that part and now live in a virtual space, you are susceptible and vulnerable and are pretty much an NPC, or one who is under the control of another person. And our young people, when they go to colleges, like you said, it appears, and when we went to Tuskegee a couple weeks ago, the dean was saying the same exact thing. You're in Howard, you're saying the same exact thing. So what is education right now? What is it doing to the young people and their minds and the future of this nation, as far as being innovative and pushing this current culture forward with the leaders that are coming in the next 50 to 100 years? How long will America actually last? Because we're seeing the remnants of the fall right now. What is the key in education, at least for our people, that we can learn from this, and how do we pivot ourselves to become more productive, and that education really has value to people within our community in a different way than it's been presented or has manifested in these times? What would you say in your experience now that you've been at Howard for how many years now?
Going on 2.
So 2 years now. So you've settled into the system, into the flow. You're seeing the different leaders that are being developed on this campus. How would you help parents? How would you encourage students to navigate this particular world and be productive?
I think the big thing is they have to be true to themselves. And unfortunately, that's something that is greatly overlooked in a lot of cases. Case in point, every time in the last 3 weeks, we've been back and forth to New York for various reasons, whether it's competitions, meeting corporate execs, CEOs, students going through interview processes for internships and full-time employment. And based on my observation, what I'm seeing is, and when I even talk to some of the students, that they really don't know what it is they're trying to achieve. They just know they don't plan on working 16 hours a day and going through the rut. They want the money, but they don't want to do what's going to be required for them to succeed in the way the system is set out right now. So what's happening is, especially in the world of finance and a lot of these corporate firms, a lot of these students go in and within 2 to 3 years they're out. They get burnt out real fast, or they just don't become a good fit. And then they're on the sideline looking for the next firm, looking for the next opportunity, because they've been promised a pot of gold that, hey, if you get this degree, especially from a prestigious institution, there's going to be, especially in certain fields, it's going to be a whole lot of money. And within 2 to 3 years, you should be pulling in 200, 250K. Some people do, but there's a cost associated with that. And not a lot of people are willing to shoulder that burden that's going to take.
Expound on that a little bit more. So, because people think 250,000, that's a lot of money, but what is the other side that comes with that type of responsibility or those types of resources?
Oh, your time. For one thing is time. Like, I was talking to a brother who just graduated last year. I called him about 10 p.m. He was like, man, Mr. P, I've been up since 8 o'clock, just closed the laptop, and I still have work to do. Because in those worlds, you got to understand, business is 24/7. So it could be 10 p.m. here, but it's bright and early in another country. That's true. Somebody has to be up to check that email, to pick up that phone. So that'd be your career. When they talk about your career in corporate America, especially these top firms, investment banking, private equity, that's your life, literally. So that's why you see they're in a lot of these big cities. They're in LA, they're in New York City, they're in Chicago. They're in these big cities, big metropolises where it's a constant speed. They're on the go. And then they have to be like this robot for the next 5 years to put themselves in a position where they can get advancement, where they could be seen. So now it's not only doing your work, but it's now taking up other projects. Now it's networking. Now it's going to happy hour. Now it's being in the in crowd so that you can maneuver yourself. It's never ending. And here's a catch-22 amongst our people is that how do you fit in to the majority white spaces, because they run that industry. So now, what is it that you have to do to then position yourself? So, for example, a brother said, and this is a successful example. He said he was so taken back by the cultural shock because when he first got into corporate America, some of his buddies, he said one time they said, oh, they're gonna go, whether it's like sailing or horseback riding, and that was something. He was from Chicago. He said, I don't do that. So he declined. There was another event that he wasn't used to doing. He declined. So what he started to see was they got to a point where they just wouldn't invite him to anything. Well, that came with its consequences because when it came to promotions and opportunities, because he wasn't in that clique, he wasn't in that culture, he missed out on a lot of things. So that was one of the things that he told the students. He said, this is why he encourages students to be well-traveled, to experience different cultures, because then you can mesh better and you can have a better understanding and not be too uncomfortable in places that are not the norm for you. So,
so what you said, that's the key is interpersonal skills is another thing that is missing among the young people, that they don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to communicate through media. But please continue.
And the good thing I see here, because here they stress it where students have to, networking is big. Public speaking is big. Even from the first day they come into business orientation. A lot of what they do is a lot of presentations, a lot of speaking. And then even in our center, some of the co-curricular activities we do, we want to help build the students in their soft skills. So like interview prep, just something called Toastmasters, just being able to speak eloquently without, when we talk and people, we have something called the clicker, because usually when people are either nervous or they have these spaces in their speech where they're trying to collect their thoughts, they usually say So finding ways to minimize that, pause, get your cadence together, slow your thoughts down, and just speak slowly. Because sometimes when you speak slowly, then you can elongate. So even while you're talking, you're still thinking about what you're going to say next versus da 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 da. So it all comes into practice, like you're practicing free throws. But you got to do the same things to build your skills. Writing. I tell students all the time, whatever it is you think is your shortcoming, that's what we need to put more energy into. So if you're a person who is front-facing, you love to connect, you're a marketing major, you can talk to anybody. Like, you can work a room. So that's your strong suit. That's not something you really need to practice on, but maybe for you, it's your managerial skills. Or maybe for you, it's your ability to, maybe it's your writing skill. So let's focus a lot of energy there to build that up to the level of your comfortability. So now when we bring the two worlds together, your versatility is off the charts. But oftentimes what we find is students shy away from the areas that they think is their weak point. So they just focus on their strong points to kind of cover up that and mask that. So for example, when we're out in these corporate headquarters and the students are presenting, you can easily see who is comfortable in front of people, who's not, because the one who's not comfortable tends to shy away and to let somebody else do the talking. So they may point out one or two things, but when it comes to question, rapid response, they sit in the back and let somebody else take the lead because they know they don't want to get up there and either say anything wrong or they don't want to feel uncomfortable. But the companies can see that, and companies utilize these opportunities to say, would this person be a good fit for our internship? Would this person be somebody we can bring in? But students at first didn't realize that they utilize these moments and these competitions for that purpose. So just like you're presenting for a prize, they're also evaluating you for opportunities as well. So at all times, you got to bring your best foot forward. So yeah, but there are different nuances that, like I said, in this current generation, and even generations even up to where we are, because of the advent of technology, we joked all the time about when Microsoft came out with Microsoft Word, when you remember that paper clip that would be in the corner that would just automatically fix the word for you. So people got out of the habit of being able to spell, because when we were in school, we used to have spelling tests. So you had to understand I before E, because believe, you're like, or is it EI, is it IE? But now, once you type it, the red letter, the red underline comes and it fixes it automatically for you. So the skill, your penmanship, once again, these are skills that were necessities that now people don't really pay attention to, but you can see the adverse effects because now students can't write, they can't speak well, because they tend to speak like the way they text. So if you speak in slang all the time, it's very difficult for you to step outside of that and talk to somebody. So that's when they get uncomfortable, because their norm is not what's normalized outside in the real world.
And that reflects also, which are great points that you mentioned, but it also reflects the person's internal way of how they see themselves and how they deal with their internal thought processes and perspective. Because a lot of times something is challenging, what do?
Shy away.
Disarm it. Boom. So they don't address it. They don't communicate it. They don't know how to talk things out. So then if you practice that habit, anytime that's confrontational, now your default is set to, I'm just going to be quiet. I'm going to be shy. I don't know why I can't get a job. I don't know why I can't start this business. I don't know why. Because you haven't been taught to be communicative or to be a leader. That's why, like you said, most of those people want to get a job. They don't want to be an entrepreneur because it takes too much of this and it's too much of that. But the problem with that is if you don't have enough entrepreneurs in your working generations, what happens is now the job market is going to get flushed out because entrepreneurs is what makes economies strong, not corporations. Corporations monopolize things and stifle competition and creativity, innovation, and then get into just cloning and buying up companies and then putting you there to manage it for them. But ultimately, that's America falling behind. That's why the world is constantly innovating and growing and coming over here, take the information, take it back home, flip it, do a job here, go. So in 20 years, and we don't teach that in education, we just think about right now and then getting a job in the next 3 to 5 years. What about 30 years from now, how the climate is going to be for that job? Because AI is coming for everybody. Oh, you better believe that. AI is coming for all of that. So if we know that to be true, and we can't stop it, what are you doing to prepare? What can students do to prepare to not only go into those fields, which is cool, but have a mindset of how you actually going to survive life itself? How do you survive life? First of all, it's the mental health check, like you said, knowing how to communicate to and with yourself, understanding why you feel a certain way instead of just pushing it away like, oh, that person just get on my nerves. Why? I don't know. There's just something about
trigger.
Okay.
What's triggering
that's your sensor. Yeah. So what is that? That person, that could mean a lot of things. And it might be, in most cases, it's you, but that person is reminding you of something because you didn't deal with it then, it's still showing up. So now it becomes a symptom, and what ended up happening begins to calcify that not only stops your growth, but it can actually cause dis-ease or disease in the physical body, because it all starts in relapses and coagulation of the mind, which is a stress, which is all these things we call mental health. Now they got so many jobs around mental health. You know, we were doing some research on some of these companies that have like GMO. That GMO food is having an adverse effect on your physical perceptions, abilities, comprehensions. Then that you go looking for a job, so much around autism, so much around this. Are these things tied to each other? Can we begin to revisit what you eat, what you're eating physically, what you're eating mentally, all of those things impact one another, just like soil. If you come in and you don't take care of the soil and you tillage the soil and you begin to dig in the soil and then put seeds in, what did you just do? You destroyed all the microorganisms. You destroyed all of the bacteria. They don't have their structures and they're this, they're that. The worms, you got rid of them. You put the seed in there. How's the seed it's gonna lose some of its nutrients? And then you begin to have things throw off in the ecosystem. Then over time, what happens? The food shortages, the deserts we have now, that didn't happen overnight. That happened with 4, 5, 6 generations. So if this generation we see here are constantly in the tech space and don't have no real world experience or connection, I'm not talking about real world like in the job market. That's one form of real world. I'm talking about in the physical environment itself, and are not connected to the land. Where does that leave us? Like I ask people all the time, when was the last time you actually touched the earth? Like actually touched it? And they,
that's dirty. That's dirty.
You better touch the earth every day if you can, but at least 3-4 times a week if you live in the concretes. Touch a tree, put your feet in the grass, do something so that you are getting the proper energy, and it actually maintains the equilibrium where you don't have the mental health issues that can come in. You become more susceptible because all you know is concrete, rubber, plastic, all the different things that are anti.
You know, just today, a couple hours ago, my next door neighbor, he was fixing his yard up. So now I was asking him about like the mulch. And he was like, yeah, when they come on sale at Home Depot, I guess I said, well, maybe we can just call up maybe one of the local landscapers and just have them dump a whole bunch of the fresh manure there. And then we can, he's like, only thing about that manure though is, you know, it attracts bugs and stuff. Because like you mentioned, because of the microorganisms and the freshness of it, of what its purpose is, he was like, I need the stuff from Home Depot because it has the pesticides. It's already sprayed, so it won't attract bugs and stuff. So he's more worried about the beautification of his landscape as opposed to the health. So what we're doing now is, because you want your front lawn and shrubberies to look beautiful, you kill the grass and you try to kill it with the pesticides, with the what's that stuff that Monsanto's Roundup, all the chemicals to kill the area. So then you can put the mulch in so it looks, and then no weeds come up. I was like, you're killing you're just killing the earth.
A false appearance of beauty.
All for beautification purposes. Because
at the end of the day, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Like, who is to say what is beautiful to who? Like, the more I'm in nature, the more a lot of those constructs are falling off my eyes. Scales are falling off. We were sitting in the grass, you see a bee, and you see some kind of insect, like fly kind of thing. I don't even know what it was. It wasn't a mosquito or something else. He's not worried about the bee, and the bee not worried about him.
Harmony.
Everybody do what they supposed to do because they supposed to be.
Yeah. There'll be a frog somewhere waiting for him to come by so you can just eat it up.
And then the frog get eaten up. Everybody has their rotation. Yeah. So once we get back to those realities, that's why it's so important to begin to reintroduce ourselves back to the land. It's like I'm in a love relationship with the land again because I'm tapping into what my ancestors did from the beginning. Adam, all the way through to all of the ones that we read about in the documentations, to the ones we saw in the captivities, to the ones that we see in the garden, in the colonizations, and the breaking up of my land, as the Most High said through the prophet Joel. You came and you broke up my land. I'm going to plead with you to put it back in order before I bring destruction. And remember, destruction can come in so many different forms. We think because we've been taught to only cognitively assess things, which is one way of doing it, and it is important, but there are other sensory portions to our being that is culturally relevant in other cultures that we minimize or trivialize as being, not stoic or not developed and ancient and all these type of things. But ancient isn't bad. Egypt been around for a long time and is still here. Thousands of years. So is America going to be here for thousands of years?
It'll be something else.
Highly unlikely based on what we see.
So, you brought up a good point about innovation, entrepreneurships. Because the things with some of these students don't realize is what you consider to be corporate today was a startup at some point. because it started somewhere, someone's idea. Then you had the venture capitalists and all the equity firms who built it up and scaled it. Now it's on Wall Street. But at one time, it was just look at Amazon. When we were in college, Amazon was an online bookstore. We used to just sell books. And I remember one of these guys from DC was saying, "Hey, y'all better get some of that Amazon stock. I'm telling y'all, I get some Amazon." If I could reach out to Kadesh and ask him how much stock he owned in that, because I remember at a party he was drunk. He was just because that day was so funny. If I called Derek right now, he kept on saying Southeast, Southeast, and I remember him having that conversation about Amazon stock. And now look, 20 some years later, Amazon is the marketplace of the world. It's put out so many small businesses, but it started off as a bookstore. So you remember Barnes and Nobles, Half.com. We will get our books and then go online and sell them, and then get them used so we can use them for the next semester, which they've completely decimated the book industry. But that was a small organization, a small cohort that now has become this massive conglomerate. But it started from somewhere.
You said it too. And you said it too. The book industry. Remember, even with Blockbuster, all that was just 15 years ago.
CD.
When Blockbuster, Netflix. So all those jobs that people are going to right now that they think they're going to get a job when I get out, I'm going to get that will fade. And if you don't understand the principle of play now, pay later, or pay now and play later, the reverse, that's life in general. So it would behoove them to say, I'm going to learn these principles from school, try them out, but on the side, begin to do something and be a part of a startup of something else so that you can create other avenues in case someone who comes along who's more AI savvy. Right now, if you don't know how to train AI and do those kind of things, that's going to become a major at some point if it isn't somewhere. And that's who's going to be driving this next level of technological corporatism. Right, as it continues to evolve, it's going into one space, and we've already seen that nothing remains the same. So students need to be, as we counsel them and help them and mentor them, to say, hey, you're in this space, but you have to be thinking like most people in the world think about generations to come. And if you become selfish toward not worrying about the next generation, then your contribution or even elongation into those realms won't even be, because most of them are so committed to the system and the way it looks and the way that it sounds that they forego even families. Then they end up coming back and saying, oh, I should have had children, or I should have spent a little more time with family. I should have done but I was pursuing what? My career. But then after you're done with your career, once you're done with the money and the money just keeps cycling, it's just going to keep coming. Taxes going to still keep coming. All those things are going to be here forever. But you feel like if you don't do this right now or the way that I see it, then it's not going to work out. Nah, it's going to always be there. So how do you manage your time? So I think management of time, internal management, is going to be really important for people to grow and have sustainable efforts and opportunities in the next 10 to 15 years. I'm just talking, we really don't know how things are going to look in the next 10 years. Based on how time is moving so fast, which the scripture already told us would be happening, that to and fro, men will be running to and fro, and times will be moving along, and that knowledge will increase.
Running away from you. Because even right now, because the system, as we can see, whether it's inflation, just look at, use rent, or you just go to the grocery store and look at food. The cost of food in the last 5 to 10 years, how it's dramatically increased. I read an article again today about how restaurants and fast food chains in California are trying to reset because they see there's a high uptick in dine-in, where people are staying home, which means people aren't spending a lot of money to go out to eat anymore. So now they're trying to figure out, how do we adjust to the current market trends? So, and then because people are complaining, they said the fast food costs too much. The bad food is getting expensive. So they're like, hold up, we got to work more hours. We're not getting paid that much, and everything's expensive. So people are going to start to cut back, which I think is a good thing too, because everything is cyclical. So, and this is what we talked about earlier when we spoke about the pros and the cons of what's going on. Because I personally believe, because things have gone so far out of whack, there are also people, eyes and ears, who are observing this, and they can see that like, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, heck no. I see what that produced and why that person's like that, I'm not going to follow in their footsteps. So just as you mentioned, in the 90s, that's where a lot of the I could do bad by myself, that independent culture came in, all of that to the 2000s. Now, as life begins tough and people are sitting back like, rent is $3,000, houses are $800,000. So now what are people thinking? Oh, I need to be with somebody. I need a partnership. So now, because the system, when things get tough, then people want to bond closer. So, like I said, everything works the same.
100%.
So
Moshe, remember they were killing the youth and throwing them into the water. So Pharaoh was like, throw them in the water, get rid of them, da-da-da. Moses' name means drawn from the water, and he was drawn from the water and given compassion by Pharaoh's daughter, or that was taking care of him, not knowing that he was going to be the answer to setting the people free from the bondage that they were currently in. But you threw them into the water, from out of the water, that same thing came back. So whatever you're sowing in, it'll reap and it'll come back in many different ways. But it's cyclical. As soon as you shoot it out this way, that don't come back 7 ways in different form. And you're like, why is this happening? Because that's the way you're perceiving it. That's the way you pushed it out. Like he told him, I'm going to kill the firstborn. Next time you do something, your firstborn is going to be out of here. He's like, oh man, you shouldn't have said that. That Jones just returned. Now your firstborn is going to be dead. So we see these cyclical things happening. Like when you try to be too greedy, you put the prices all the way up and you just keep taxing people. People start spending, then you lose your power on the other end, because now you got all this bulk of stock and produce and product that is not moving off the shelves. So then it begins to ricochet on you. So that's what brings the balance. And that's a principle that is in agriculture that was alchemized into industrialization, as they call it. And those principles are still forever. So that's the real truth. We put it like this. Most High has been showing nature will give you evidence, then you can see and understand what is it implying or suggesting, and then what is it confirming. Case in point, the sun is up there, it gives life to everything on the earth. The garden, aka Africa's in the middle of the earth and all the hemisphere. All of the riches are there. The people who live there have a certain type of skin and hair and ability and melanation above most people on the earth who live in that southern hemisphere, not just in the garden, but even in some of Asia and some of the other parts of the world. And they absorb that. What does that say about the creator and nature? What is nature suggesting by these particular phenomenons? And then you have confirmation. What does it confirm? What is evident? If we don't understand the language of nature, then we're not going to be able to move. And Moses didn't either. He was in the city. He was running he was doing this thing. And then he fell into some hard times. He got caught up in a situation trying to help his people, and his people turned on him. And he goes into the wilderness to what? Relearn again. The elements. He became a shepherd. He went back to what his ancestors did. He did back what Noah did. He did back. And remember, the scripture talks at the beginning that it was him, the son of Levi. His father was the son of Levi who married a daughter of Levi. That's very important. The scripture wouldn't just put that in there for nothing. It's letting you know that this is a full alignment from the way the Most High created it from the beginning. So in order to find yourself, you're never going to find yourself until you get back to the ground. Period. Because in the ground is your nutrients, is your life. That's why he said, forgive your sin, heal your land. Because if you're eating from the food properly and there's all the microbes and everything's in order and you eat that, then the innovation, then all the mental begin to fall to the wayside, because all of that is built in from chemical misconstruction, deceptions, So that's why we have back to Eden, get back to your Eden state, because not only back to Eden, get back to Eden, the ground, going back to the ground. Because when you get back to the ground, let's do a test on it. I guarantee you, if we do a study on it, we're going to see that difference. And that's some of the stuff that we want to do is let's eat natural foods. And I know it's very difficult and people are so far from it. So you can give them foods like in our communities where there's a lot of oppression and brokenness, and they don't even pick it. They're going to eat the other food because it's almost like lab rat-ish in a sense. Not saying that people are lab rats. I'm talking about the chemically based lifestyle, whether it be cocaine or it be sugar. We had that whole concept of in the 80s, they were selling crack cocaine or powder cocaine. But then in the neighborhoods, what was they selling? Snickers, M&Ms, 27 grams of sugar. That's still grams. That's still kilos on both sides. So then the mom is coming in, dad's coming in.
That's doing major damage too. Diabetes, that's doing major damage to people long term. Teeth decay, you name it. A lot of the ailments we have come by just from that white refined powder.
Not sugarcane, which built the country.
It's sad, but it could be changed. But we got to understand that because you live in a capitalist environment, there's somebody always benefiting from your calamity. So whether it's Frito-Lay, they're not going to, the government's not going to just come say, we're going to eradicate potato chips, because there's somebody who has a vested interest in seeing this through. So there's somebody getting paid. There's industries, whether it's beef, knowing all the craziness and things that they're including in it that other countries don't allow. But we allow all these chemicals, 0 calorie this, no sugar that, all these things, these concoctions, and they're just poison. Literally poison. We don't know what they are. We don't know the adverse effects. And they could be outlawed at any time. But once again, because the dollar is king, and that's what everybody worships from the government all the way down, they're not going to stop that. They say, well, it's your free choice. It's there, but you don't have to take it. They can make the difference.
And that was one of the major keys that Martin Luther King did very well above all the other stuff. And I know his intention at one time or another was good, and then made some mistakes, and he realized it, that like we all do. Cool. But one of the greatest things he did was the power of knowing how to maneuver your dollar. But because there's no organization, we're unified. We as a people are unified. We understand the struggles we've dealt with. We understand what our ancestors have gone through for the most part. And we're learning more and more through technology. The problem is we're not organized, and we don't have a oneness of heart. You get what I'm saying? Because if you do, then they hit you with these other strongholds. They'll call you socialist, or they'll call you this or call you that, based on their, like you said, capitalistic viewpoint. But it's just a system. It's a way of being. It's a thought process. It's a culture. So if you create another culture, kingdom culture, even in the midst of Babylonish, or Egyptian, or Nimrodian, or fallen ideologies, doctrines, you can build awareness and strength within those numbers. Remember Daniel, they was in the captivity. He said, me and my boys, us four, we not doing that. And watch, let's do the test. We're gonna eat straight from the ground. We're not gonna eat any of the delicacies, and let's see who's come out. We just want water and the earth. Now, if the system falls apart, how you gonna make it? It's already set for destruction. So when we read destruction, we think like, oh, no one wants to hear that. Okay. But I'm just showing you what does nature suggest? What does it confirm? That if Ralph's is not there, Giant on the East Coast, or wherever you at, Albertsons, whatever your food provider, Kroger, whatever your food providers are, if they stop bringing that food from the ground to you for them to feed you, and you had to be left on your own like a lion would if it wasn't in the zoo, could you survive? That's just the reality. I was in that position before. I'm almost out of it. I'm getting out of those captivities where I can say very soon that won't be the case for me. Yes, I could survive. I know the earth enough. I know how it operates because I took the time to seek the Most High, because he created the heavens and the earth. So once you seek the Most High and you get into those spaces, you begin to see how your power increases, because now you have autonomy all the way through to, if you have your own land, you can excavate and find that you have minerals to create your own whatever it is that you think you're pursuing in those other spaces. But we don't want to take the time, and we don't want to organize, and we don't want to move. That's why we're at the bottom of the totem pole, based on the curses of not wanting to be the caretaker but being taken care of. So we can't blame other groups, other people. At the end of the day, at this time, this season of our lives, our ancestors who were in struggle did way more than we who have everything, because over time you get laxed, right? You get comfortable. So now for anything, like I love when the students are, standing up for what they believe in, but they did that for the Vietnam War. They're doing it for this Hamas and Israeli war. They're going to do it for all the wars. And that's a systematized way of approaching things. However, in this particular ones, the students are becoming more conscious of the environment and things of that nature. So we do see good always coming out when things are off from chaos. The Most High makes the whole world out of chaos. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the deep. And the Most High said, let there be light. So be the light. That's why we call it Light Your Path.
Be the light.
Everything we say has a connection to nature, has a connection to the environment, has a connection on many different layers. The ancestral documentation, ancestors in real time within our lifetime, when we went down to Tuskegee and was able to see what Booker T had done and George Washington Carver, and learn his regenerative ways of being, and now are going to implement it in the farms that we're operating with and partnering with in the South, where our ancestors came, where the strongholds were before they went to DC, Maryland, Virginia for the industrial, restoring the years of what has been lost by going back to the old waste places, the repairs of the breach, restores of paths to dwell in. That's the work that we're doing, and it's being led by the Most High because it's already set in nature and we've seen the cycle already. So the scripture gives us a great roadmap of how things happen when we walk in certain ways. And as we align those things, then the Most High can begin to move in the environment to begin to decipher the sheep from the goats, the wheat from the tare, and the have from the have not, and the snitches from the real ones.
You know, when you just mentioned George Washington Carver, because I remember last week when I was reading about him, the parallel with just Moses, because remember when you spoke about Moses being put in the river and being drawn in the Egyptian household there. George Washington Carver was raised by the plantation owner, hence how he got his name. And they said his love for plants came because of being on that plantation where cotton and all those things were being grown. Not knowing the person who was going to come redeem and save them was basically a slave, and then his interest was what drove him to meet the needs of that day to solve the problem of the soil issues they were having because of the over farming of cropping of cotton and all those different things in that area. But it's if he was a free man and there was no slavery, would he have had the attention to be inquisitive about plants, to go into botany? But because he was on the plantation as a young kid, very adventurous, he just became enamored with plants. Now he's they call him the father of peanuts. But then when you read about what peanuts actually do for the soil and how it changed the course of agriculture, that beginning is amazing. That's an amazing beginning.
That's Moshe. So what is nature? From that parallel, you did it perfect. Mm-hmm. It literally sounds like the Moses, because that's the same seed. That's why they took them from the Holy Land, took them from the garden, and brought them over here, because they know that seed line. Moshe, seed line, Judah, all these names we have now, which are branded names from other nations that have taken the book. But in the original, you're going to see it in the seed. What does nature suggest? What does it confirm? And we just saw that one who came in from plantation, plants, water, Moses, out of water, into water, oppression, killing, slavery, same concept, and still able to maneuver through and bring healing that is impacting us to this day. So the Most High has a lot of great things in store for us, because now we are waking up and we're coming back to him, coming back to the land, coming back to ourselves, loving ourselves and building with one another. And let the world do what they do, because as we move forward, you're going to see the glory of the Father in his fullness, because he's revealing it in his own way, in his own time. He has nothing to prove to any human being, because he owns every single thing. So if I own stuff, I know when I own stuff, you walk in the room, you don't be trying to prove people like, hey, this is where I live. Don't you know this is mine? You don't even know when the owner pull up, like, that's the owner right there. You're like, dang, that's the owner. That's the owner. Why he dressed like that? Why he got dirty jeans? Because he's out in the field putting the manure into his 18th farm that he's bought. Now he got 300,000 acres. What are we talking about? Building cities. So that's the pathway. We got to keep building our people, and we need to be everywhere. And that's what I learned about Booker T, because most people say, oh, he was a sellout, but he's still here, and his school is still forever, and it's all over the world, where you see Afro peoples. Start off as an institute, like you said, and now became a university. wherever you start, scripture says, do not despite small beginning, because everything starts at sea level. But as you water it, you see what it begins to do. We're a testimony of that. Look at the glory of the Father that has been bestowed upon us, and that he continued to help us to help our people and to help people in general how to move forward.
You know, and the last thing before we go, and this is something I tell students all the time, is your intent matters. Don't go into something thinking about what could happen in the terms of what I can get out of this. So this goes back to this goes back to the passion thing. If you're interested in something enough, we say, what is it? Remember, they used to always ask, what is it that you would do with your time and do it for free? That's the thing you really enjoy. That is what's going to bring you fulfillment, not the ROI. If I do this, can I get this? When Zuckerberg created Facebook, this is an introvert trying to figure out a way to connect people to other people. He had no concept that this was going to be $1 billion enterprise. It was all about connecting the dots, connecting people, connecting, and then you see what it is today. That's where it begins. It begins with just your idea. It's like a fascination. It's your inquisitive nature. It's your interest in this thing. And the next thing you know, you don't know where it's going to go, but you just know this is all I know and this is what I like. So if it's music, you enjoy music, good music, when it hits the right ears, that's what makes it amplify. Because they're like, man, this thing is hot, and it's gone. It's not, you don't go into it thinking, what's the next hit I can make that everybody's going to like? That's usually the ones that don't hit.
That's true.
It's the one that hits you.
You don't know what's going to hit.
It's
Just
the one that hits you. You're like,
yeah,
man, I didn't even know that I was going to hit like that. I didn't even think it was my best work. And then but it hit somebody else, and then it's gone. So, you know, the intent matters. So doing the thing for the main thing, not because of what you can get out of it, but doing it for, as you just mentioned, good-hearted, to serve people, to serve yourself and your community. That's what matters. As long as we're in that alignment and in that mindset, there's nothing that you can't do. Nothing that you can't do.
And with that being said, we'll see you next time.